If you wish your students were more focused, engaged in your classroom, then this episode is absolutely for you. Welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. Why are we here? Because we don't believe that our spiritual walk and teaching profession should exist in two separate domains. Rather, the hope we have in Christ should change how we approach everything, not just at home, but at school as well. So join us as we explore both the spiritual and practical sides of key teaching challenges, integrating them together so we can succeed at teaching, glorify God, and make a lasting difference in our students' hearts and lives. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. We also want to thank our summit sponsor, Dordt University. Dordt University's 100% online master's program equips educators to teach Christianly, no matter the setting. Their programs include a Master of Education, Master of Special Education, and Master of Arts in Teaching. Find out more and get 50% off your first course when you visit teachfortheheart.com/Dordt. That's teachfortheheart.com/DORDT. Well, today I'm so excited to bring you a replay of a session from last year's Rise Up Summit. It was one of our favorite sessions with Dave Stuart Jr., where we talked about motivating students to care about learning. Before I play that, I want to invite you, if you are not yet signed up for the Rise Up Summit, it is starting this Thursday. It is 100% free to attend the weekend of, and you can choose to listen to every single session or just pick your favorite one. And Dave is going to be back again with more amazing advice. So if you haven't signed up yet, please join us at riseupchristianeducators.com. All right, let's dive into this conversation. All right, I think we're live. So welcome, everyone. Okay. We're so excited to be here. I'm Linda Cardamus here with Dave Stuart. And we're going to be talking about motivating students to care about learning. We are so excited. It said Dave sent me his notes. And I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome. So those of you that aren't familiar with Dave, he is a longtime teacher, educator, that is always thinking and sharing his insights over at his website. And we're so thankful that he's here today, author of so many books, the newest one, The Will to Learn. So Dave, thank you again so much for being with us here today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Linda. As I told you, I've been delighted to be a part of Rise Up now for a few years. And it's a special opportunity to get to approach the things that I write about from the lens of a disciple of Jesus. So tonight we get to examine, I don't want to turn on a background effect. We get to examine student motivation, a topic that I would describe as both beautiful and terrible. Beautiful because when it's there, it is awesome, and terrible because when it's not, it is really, really hard to do the work of education with any sense of sanity. So real quick, I will tell you that my work is really informed by these dual roles that I inhabit, the role of being a husband and a father, and that of being an educator. I've been teaching now for about half a career, and it's been a true delight. I think teaching's the best thing that you can do with your life, as long as you've got the disposition for it and can keep a good perspective. I absolutely love it. I think each one of us influences the life trajectories of young people in the work that we do. Whether we want to or not, we do influence their life trajectories. But at the same time, I don't, I'm past that point in my career, which I was embarrassingly in for a few years, of thinking that I can do it all, that I can be the protagonist in the teacher movie that kind of makes it all happen and, works themselves sick because they're so noble and sacrificial. So when I began writing about 11 years ago, it was really from this position of how do I optimally promote the long-term flourishing of young people? How do I make it so that they can grow as much as possible in my classroom without me sacrificing my life on the altar of success? So as we approach student motivation tonight, it's through that lens. Not just any old approach to student motivation is acceptable to me in my practice as a teacher and my writing for teachers. It needs to be the most efficient, robust way to cultivate student motivation. So I am going to begin us by contemplating love. And I'll just read the very first paragraph in this book, which says, "Dear colleague, what you hold in your hand is a book about love. This isn't much of a claim, after all. All good books on teaching come down to studies on love. Love is the active, earnest, and intelligent pursuit of our neighbor's good. Is this not what we spend our labors on each day in our classrooms with students?" And so as we think about cultivating student motivation, the question is, why? Why do we need to do that? And the reason is because you can't do the thing that school is meant to do if the students don't care to do it. If their souls are not enlisted, school becomes impossible. So this here on the screen, this is how I would define what school is for, whether you teach in a Christian setting or a secular setting, public school, charter school, urban, rural. I believe that parents send their children to school hoping that school will do something that advances the long-term flourishing of their young people. And the specific thing that we're hoping for is that our schools will teach young people to master things that outside of school they would be unlikely to do. So it's the second part. This is where the rub exists. This is why student motivation is, I would say, based on my conversations with teachers in my school and far away from it, it's at a crisis level right now, because you can't make a young person or a child master anything. We as educators lack that power. The Father has not chosen to make us omnipotent over the will of our neighbor. It's not a thing inside of our tool set, because mastery only happens when two things occur. A child will only grow better in mathematics or science or social studies or phys ed if that young person does certain work, and it can't be busy work. It needs to be the right work. But even more difficult, does that work with care, with enlistment, with the whole of their being saying, I want to do this work, not just because there's a grade, not just because there's a consequence, but because this is something that I find valuable. This is a teacher whom I respect. This work pays off. It produces change in me, and I like how it feels to be successful. I want to do this work because I fit here. I'm a reader. I'm a science student. I'm a musician in music class. So, a lot of the approaches, Linda, that I see, promoting student motivation, trying to improve student motivation, they really seem to be content with just getting kids to do work, just getting young people to do work. And I think that's really problematic, because if you have the best lesson in the world and you're able to develop systems to get kids to do work, but they don't actually care to be doing it, they don't think there's any point. Well, that is what I would describe as a deeply painful spiritual situation. An argument that I make in the early pages of the book is that student demotivation is painful. No child that you've ever taught, no freshman that I've ever taught, wants to not want to do school. Nobody wants to be demotivated. It's just not. It's not in our composition. It's not how God has designed human beings. We were never intended to do things against our will. And so if you're in school every day for 180 days a year, and you constantly are struggling with these beliefs that school is pointless, school is impossible for you, you're just not good at it, then yeah, I would say that's a torturous situation. So this first point, this idea that student motivation is it's rooted in love, its foundation is love, is really just based on the idea that what we're offering in school is of great value, the long-term flourishing of your life, the realization of your potential. And I believe fervently that math class does that for every student. It's good. Growing more masterful, more competent in mathematics or literature. These are net good things. I've never met an adult who says, Dave, you're a teacher, huh? Man, I wish I wouldn't have learned so much math in school. I'm really angry about that. That's really disadvantaged me in my life. And so it's a loving thing for us to want to help young people to master our classes, all of our young people, even if they're never going to become a mathematician. Most of them aren't. I teach history. Most of my students will not become historians. I have no illusions of that, no dreams for that. I don't want them to be. But what I would like is for them to grow in their mastery, their knowledge of world history, to develop the ability to see the world through this lens, a lens that no other subject can give them. I wrote elsewhere in the book about this idea that every subject is its own little universe. It's its own cosmos. It's an order. And I think from a Christian perspective, it's an order that God created. All of our subjects, he placed the potential for them in the universe when he made it. And so as we teach young people mathematics, as we teach them English language arts, I think it's so important. And we'll talk about this a bit more later, but it's so important for us to just cultivate an awareness of how incredible what we have on offer at school is. And then simultaneously how incredibly painful it is for young people to not be motivated in school. Does that make sense? How I think love informs how we approach student motivation before we even get into how student motivation works. I think that's the starting place.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that's not the way a lot of people, like you said, are approaching it. It's a lot of tactics. But you're right. That starting with that is a powerful place to understand this is a way when I am helping students be motivated, it's a way of caring for them. It's a way of loving them. It's a way of promoting their flourishing and keeping them from having a difficult experience at school. Yeah. So that's really neat. Yeah. Pursuing their good, right? In this way.
I just think it's so important for us to understand, and especially as Christian teachers, because sometimes we can get very disheartened and wonder, well, how am I really being a disciple of Jesus, in my public school with all the issues that public schools face today? And I think it's because you're working towards when you work towards a child growing more competent and capable in your subject area, that's about the most active, high-powered, earnest, intelligent thing that you could possibly do for your neighbor's good, for your students' good. So, the basis of my approach is right here on the screen. Essentially, the whole new piece that I think I bring to the conversation around student motivation is that it is about what a child believes. Okay. There's a lot of talk in education about mindsets, but if you look at the definition for mindsets, they use this language, this older language, more cross-cultural language of belief. And the way I think about belief is it's certainty that you don't even have to think about. It's the relationship that you have with the chair that you're sitting on right now. It's that you didn't have to convince yourself to sit in that chair. You believe that chairs work because you've had a number of experiences that confirm that belief. But by the way, this I think is a huge key to understanding what the heck Jesus is talking about sometimes when he randomly says to his disciples, "Oh, you have little faith." He's saying, "Oh, you have little belief. You think these thoughts about me." Like Peter is a beautiful example. He thinks these thoughts about Jesus. He thinks Jesus is Messiah. He says it, and he's praised by Jesus for that. But a chapter later, he's absolutely acting contrary to that because Peter has knowledge in his mind that hasn't sunk into his will. So, as you look at this screen, sure, admire the amazing color scheme. I know it's awesome. But more importantly, realize that these are things that students need thousands of experiences with in a year if we're going to meaningfully move them along the spectrum from unbelief to belief. Because you can't just talk them into this stuff. Although, as we'll discuss, talking them into some things that's a good move. But more what we're after is not just convincing them of an argument. We're after breathing into the atmosphere, signaling through the atmosphere of our classes this other way of relating to school, this way in which you have a good teacher that knows what the heck they're doing and cares about doing it and has a fire in their belly for it. We want to create an environment where there are all sorts of ways to think about why history class or science class or computer class, why that is valuable. There's so many ways human beings can come to value something. And we want to create environments where students think that effort is actually desirable, that the undesirable state is when they're bored and unchallenged. That's the effort belief. And these are tied together because it's really hard to have the effort belief if you don't also have the efficacy belief. Because if you don't think that you're going to succeed, then eventually effort's going to lose its allure. If you keep failing and failing and failing and failing again. And then last on the tippy top of the pyramid is belonging, the sense that I fit here, that this is the place that I'm supposed to be. It's not weird for me to be asking questions in math class. That's part of how I think of me. That's part of my identity. That's what belonging is all about. Identity fitting with context. And so as I say these things, I mean, I think we all can think of a student who's not lining up with what I'm saying, who says, I'm not a school person. That's a belonging problem. It doesn't matter how hard I try, Mr. Stewart, I won't get better. That's an effort problem, an efficacy problem. Man, Mr. Stewart, this stuff's just pointless. I'm going to go out and make money doing this, that, or the other thing. And I don't need to know this for that. That's a value problem. Okay. So, where we're going to begin, and unless Linda, there's something that you want to pull out there, is we're going to begin with credibility, and we're going to examine what goes into that. How do we as Christian educators potentially approach credibility with a special angle?
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I hope you guys listen in the chat. Let us know if you have thoughts or questions as we go through this. But no, please. I think those key beliefs are so key. If you've heard this before, you're tracking with us. If it's new, you might be like, whoa, this is a whole different way of looking at it. But just that recognition of like, it makes so much sense, right? Like, oh yes, if they don't believe that, of course, that's why they're feeling demotivated. That's why they don't want to do it. So excited to start diving into a few of these and how we can start changing those beliefs. Slowly.
And I'll switch. I'll apologize to people who've seen me before. I say a lot of the same ideas again and again and again. And, it's because this is the stuff that I'm thinking about every single day and just exploring in my classroom practice. And these are the tools that I actually use. So I'm a guy who once I find something that I think really explains reality, explains what I'm seeing in the classroom, I'm going to just stick with that and try to get as good as I possibly can be at that. So let's talk about how to become really good at cultivating credibility. And I saw someone ask a question. Credibility is when a student believes that teacher is good at their job. And I'll often ask audiences when I'm at schools. So what do you think goes into that? How do students arrive at that conclusion? This credibility thing, according to John Hattie, biggest researcher in educational history, is, one of the biggest deals that there is in terms of influencing classroom outcomes. So we should probably pay attention to it. So what makes a kid believe in me? What makes them believe in you? What makes them think that you're good at your job? And people come up with a million answers, and it's all, a bunch of stuff goes into credibility, but you can really summarize it as care, competence, and passion. Care and competence and passion. And I think where we as Christian educators uniquely can approach this little diagram here is we can ask ourselves two really important questions. Okay. If I know that me signaling to a young person is going to help them find me credible, then that's something I want to do. I want to signal to all my students that I care about each of them. I do. But now as a disciple of Jesus, who's constantly challenging his disciples to really, really be honest. I feel like so much of Jesus's educational program with the disciples is, guys, just stop pretending. I don't need you to pretend. What I need you to do, what I want to help you to do is just be to truly be honest, to truly examine this. I make a statement here in the Sermon on the Mount: love your enemies. Don't just view that as a checkbox. I want you to really ask yourself, what does that mean? So I think when we look at the little CCP chart, care, competence, passion, we need to examine if we genuinely care about each of our students, including the ones who mistreat us. And then we also need to examine, do we actually have a passion that we renew day by day, a confidence in the goodness of what we are offering. And, in the spirit of honesty, that's the thing that I find really ebbs and flows in me. So I just want to share a couple of things that I found very helpful in these two areas. Not just helpful in the sense of helping my teaching practice, but also helpful in letting my teaching practice be used as a discipleship tool by Jesus unto me, letting him use that thing that I do every day of the week to shape me and to grow this wayward soul over here. So I think here it's important to kind of situate ourselves with a little bit of an accurate understanding of what a student is. I make this remark early on in the book that we really have a hard situation with teaching students, because if you think about it, they're basically invisible. Yes, we can see their face, we can see what they're wearing, we can see some facial expressions. You get too close to some of my ninth grade boys, I can smell them. Okay. I can definitely sense some things about my students, but most of who my students is invisible to me. I can talk to my students every day and I'll still know this much of their personal history. I know this much of what they've experienced in school prior to coming to me. I know this much about how their biochemistry works and, what bacteria they got in their gut and how that influences their mood. Like there's just a bajillion things that I don't see. So part of, I think a helpful solution to this is to think of my students not as just these weird evolving hormonal bodies in front of me, but as souls, as creatures composed of these 5 different chunks. And then the question is, what is the default setting of my soul when it comes to caring for students? What is my tendency going to be if I don't pay attention to it? And my tendency is going to be, as a teacher, I'm going to tend to care about the students that are a certain type of way that resonates with me. I'm going to tend to care about the students that treat me in ways that I like to be treated. The default tendency is there's going to be, if I'm not careful about it, if I'm not mindful about every name on my roster and my heart's disposition towards them, I'm going to develop, without meaning to, favorites. I'm going to develop, without meaning to, biases that will influence the care signals that I send out, and therefore will influence how credible I am with all of my students. So, I made this little graphic earlier today, goofing around. We got our default human soul position, and then we got Christ, who himself had a fully human soul and fully God. And we're saying, I care about certain kinds of people. And he says, I care for everybody, no matter how they treat me. And then what my heart responds is, yeah, but Jesus, do you know what this kid said to me last week? Do you know the look that she gave me when I handed out the assignment and rolled her eyes and I thought she was going to lose her eyes in the back of her head? You know how that made me feel, Jesus? And I think he just says, yeah, I absolutely know how you feel, but nonetheless. So Lewis has this epic quote that I should probably print this out and put it somewhere in my classroom, because it really is from his essay, The Way to Glory. And I can remember one time I was probably breaking some rules. I printed this essay out, put it on my clipboard while we were giving a state test. Don't worry, I was still proctoring, but I was also reading The Way to Glory as I walked around. And he has this line where he says, there's no ordinary people, no ordinary students. He never taught one. You've never met someone who's merely mortal. All the other stuff of humanity, these are mortal. Their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit, whom we teach immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. This does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play. But our merriment must be of that kind, and it is, in fact, the merriest kind, which exists between people who have, from the outset, taken each other seriously. No flippancy, no superiority, no presumption. And it's those last three words that I think are excellent food for thought for us as educators as we think about cultivating teacher credibility. Are there students whom I refer to flippantly outside of their presence? Are there students whom I feel that I am superior, that I'm better than them? Are there students who I assume things about? When they walk in the classroom, I assume it's going to go this way. Students with whom I'm being presumptuous. And Lewis gives us this beautiful counter way to think and to say all of these are examples of not taking students seriously enough. All of these are basically people who think that they're in this kind of world, but in fact, they're in this kind of world. And Lewis is helping us to see that on your roster this year, every single one of those names is a never before seen creation. And it's not just like a snowflake, those are never before seen too, and they're amazing. But no, these creations, these kids wearing their hoodies and just acting like normal kids, looking like normal kids, these are going to last for eternity. These are creatures whom God decided to impart his image onto. They're people whose dignity makes the Grand Canyon look like a little divot in the highway. And I think that, what I like about this is that that's not how I normally think. As an educator, I can just real easy think, okay, it's Monday, it's Tuesday. But I believe that what Jesus calls us into as Christian educators is, Dave, there's no such thing as just a Tuesday when you're an educator. Those don't exist, buddy. Like, you are about to meet these people that I've been thinking about making for 1 billion years. And I finally am bringing them on the stage. And they spend an hour a day with you. So what are you going to do, Dave? These thoughts help me to enter in to and I've been teaching now about half a career. So it is just true. Like the faces do kind of start to blend together. You do see patterns in student behavior. So I really need thoughts like this to remind myself, okay, and yes, Dave, you taught all these years, and this year is this year, and these kids are these kids, and you've never seen anything like them, even if it seems like you have. So, there's a reason that I dedicated the book like this. My book on student motivation is dedicated to the teacher who loves all children, now, then, and always. And just to be clear, colleagues, this is not a book written for Christian educators exclusively. This is a book written with secular audiences in mind, people of all walks. But what I'm glad to begin to share with you with some of this stuff is, it comes from deeply Christian places.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. The Stanley M. Herzog Charitable Foundation's mission is to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality, Christ-centered K-12 education so that families and culture flourish. They provide online content, up-to-date news, trainings and events, grants, and hands-on organizational improvement initiatives for Christian schools and families. You can find all their initiatives and offerings at herzogfoundation.com. Now, back to our program.
Real practically, a thing that you can do to improve student motivation, to to cultivate credibility, to build that foundation from which you can, do all the rest of the beliefs in the top of our pyramid, is to just print out all your students' names on a single sheet of paper. And this paper exists for one reason, to keep track of when you have what I call a moment of genuine connection attempt. And that's a moment when specifically you're talking to a young person and you are trying to communicate from your soul into theirs. You're trying to transport this sense that you have of their value, of their uniqueness. That's the known part. And of their importance. That's the respect part. So a moment of genuine connection, I mean, I make it sound like all big and powerful, and I believe that it is, but it looks very mundane. It looks like pulling a student aside at the start of class. And, this week was college and career week at school. So I decided I'm just going to ask all the students this week. I'm going to try to get them all this week for moments of genuine connection. Just here, there, everywhere. Just try to get them. And I'm just going to ask them about their future plans. So that's a brief 30 to 60 second little chat with that one student. But what I'm trying to do with that student at that time is show that, I'm interested. I want to know what you're thinking about. I think it's important what you're talking about. You want to be a pilot. I really think that's neat. Have you thought about this? You're not sure what you're doing. You know what? I was like that too when I was your age. Have you thought about just asking your relatives next time you see them what their jobs are and how they like it? Moments of genuine connection are very, very short. But the thing that we often miss because of our biases is we can basically end up not getting every kid consistently. We can end up talking to the same 50% of our kids time and time again. I saw someone in the chat said they're a music teacher with 400 teachers. You might need a few sheets of paper, and you definitely don't try to do it in a week, okay? Because that would be crazy. The whole advice that I give with tracking MGCs is you got to pick a pace that's sustainable, but you absolutely, positively, you can't leave it up to your mind to do this. Because if you leave it up to your mind, you will inevitably hyper signal to a few kids on your spectrum, but you'll under signal to other kids on your spectrum. Picture all the kids on a line from, one extreme to the other. Maybe you do a lot of MGCs here without keeping track. Maybe you do a lot here without keeping track, but you're probably going to underserve here. And that's going to be a problem. You may never exactly know, but that will contribute to diminished motivation in your classroom because fewer of those kids are going to really think that you care about them. They might think, oh, you care about the class. You say that all the time. You care about art. You say that all the time. And those are all great things. That'll help your credibility. But until you're having those one-on-one brief conversations where you try to make a person feel valued, known, and respected, they're not going to be convinced that you actually care about them. They're not going to get that vibe that I feel like I would get if I got to have a pint in an English pub with C.S. Lewis, right after he got done writing that line in Way to Glory, man. I bet whoever sat down for a beer with him next, they felt like $1 million. That guy was just paying close attention to them. Our students won't get that from us unless we are intentional about this discipline, tracking MGCs.
Dave, this is great. I have a kind of a question that's kind of come up. When do you do this? Do the majority of them happen like during class time? And I'm assuming you're not like stopping your, an active teaching time to do this. Like, is it happening like while they're working or in between class or like when? I just put a YouTube video out about this week actually, because this was a weird week because I was trying to get to them all in 1 week. Typically, it's not. It's probably about once a month per kid, or maybe once every 3 weeks. Most common thing that I'll do is during the warm up at the start of class, I'll pull a kid or two aside, and I'll talk to them. Sometimes I'll do it as the first kid walks into class, or as the last kid's filtering out. Just say, hey, quick question for you. How's school been going? Everything okay? Anything that you need? So it's not and like I said, this week was weird because I intended to do all of them in 1 week. So I had a big independent work assignment on one day. It was filling in some information on a map of a unit that we've been studying, and we've done map time before. So like they know how to do it. They know why it's important. They're pretty well motivated to do that type of work. So, and I told them, I want to talk to you all about
this question this week. So that's why I'm kind of structuring class like that today. But that's very rare when I'll do like a dozen or two in a day. That's not normal. No, that's not normal. And then some days we'll go and I'll forget to track them. So that's why the clipboard is good too, because it's sitting there staring at me saying, "Hey, knucklehead, you going to go talk to the Rise Up teachers on Friday and about this clipboard and you're just going to get dust on it? Let's go." So there is a thing though that I think it also needs to be said about this, and it's that you can't communicate care to a student that you don't like. Mm-hmm. You can't genuinely signal valued, known, and respected to a kid that you actually have animosity towards. And unless you are teaching in, Pollyanna High School, there are children that fit this description for you. There are children that fit this description to me. Kids who just they can rub me the wrong way. They may have a bad attitude consistently, and I take it personally. They may disrupt class at the absolute worst moment, day after day after day. Whatever the profile is, that there are just students who we must work at loving. We will not just love them automatically. That is a thing that I feel that as a young teacher I would have thought was heretical. Like, what do you mean? Of course you love all your students. Yeah, but if you're honest, you have a hard time loving some of them. So I love to once in a while take that clipboard, take a walk. I can still picture myself actually when I first started teaching in Baltimore. This was 15 years ago, but I was teaching middle school in Baltimore, and I had some very angry students at that school. They were just so mad every day. And, sometimes they would just say the very, very extremely harsh things. And I remember sitting at my little dinky kitchen table in my apartment all by myself and looking at this roster of kids and literally getting on my knees and asking God, I do not like this kid, this kid, this kid. I don't like him, but I would like to like him. I think that my life would be better if I liked him. I think that you want me to like him. So Lord, will you please help me to love these young people that I currently don't love? Will you please help me with that? And since then, I've done this, I don't even know how many times. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of places in my life where I think my faith is still just tiny, tiny, tiny baby in terms of actual certainty. Like what I was saying before, like you really see me, you're like, oh man, that guy's totally a disciple of Jesus. I mess up all the time in so many areas, but this is one area where it's like, I might as well tell you that tomorrow the sky's going to be blue. That's how confident I am about saying that if you pray this prayer to the Father in earnestness and honesty, that you currently don't like XYZ child, and ask him for help, like he delights in answering this prayer. It is it's one of those prayers where you get what Jesus is saying. If you ask for something in my name, you'll receive it. Well, yeah, guess who's probably real interested in your students having someone who absolutely loves them be with them every single day? Guess who probably lines their will right up with that operation? Yeah, God. He would like that. So I encourage you, colleagues, if you're struggling with some students, which many of us are right now, if you're on an American schedule, man, it's that time of year where you just start to feel tired and you start to feel exhausted, and certain students are really getting on your nerves. It's a great use of 10 minutes. Go take a walk and talk to God very honestly about it. Listen to one of those Psalms of Lament before you do it, just to get you in the mood to really go at him. Let him know how you feel when those students hurt you, and see what he does. So this will help a lot with the care thing if we do things like this.
Wow. That's so powerful. I love the encouragement of the prayer, just being honest with God and asking him to do something supernatural. That's the kind of God, that's the God we have that delights to do that. The moments of genuine connection, tracking them, so that we don't miss certain students. And And I think back in the beginning of this, some people were asking, well, how do you show students that? How do you develop that credibility? This is how it, like you're saying, it starts from, do you have credibility? do we actually care? And then that comes out in those intangible ways, and then also intentional ways, both.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. That genuine part of moments of genuine connection, that's an important part. I didn't just throw that in there because it sounded cool, but oftentimes if I'm speaking to a more secular audience, I don't go as hard on it as I just did with all of you, but yeah, I mean, what are we to be known by? Our love for one another. And I don't think he minds throwing our students in that one another section. So yeah, we really colleague, we really got to bring those things to him, those problems with caring about students. And this middle part, I'll just say that's really hard. Competence. That's all these other sessions. If you haven't watched Michael Linson's session yet, go watch that. Check out that guy's blog, because this right here, can you manage classroom behavior? Right at the top of that competence circle, that's the guy who helped me gain competence in classroom management. You got to give yourself grace, because it takes a long time to get good at teaching, but this passion thing, this passion thing can also be fixed rather quickly. So let's talk about that. There's this really cool concept from the secular research called the Peter effect. And in this study, they were looking at how pre-service teachers were having lower habits of reading and attitudes toward reading. And they were finding that this was having an impact. It was correlating to their students. The students of these pre-service teachers were also having lower attitudes toward and lower number of minutes read, something like this. And it's really cool. They called it the Peter effect, based on this line from the book of Acts. And where Peter basically says to the beggar on the steps, he says, listen, I don't have any money, but what I do have, I give you. And so they call it the Peter effect, and it's such a relevant concept to all of us. Basically, you can't give what you don't have. So when we talk about teacher credibility and signaling passion, even when we talk about cultivating value, helping our kids actually value what we do, if we are not the most sold out person in the room on this screen right here, it's going to be really hard for us to cultivate that in a powerful and effective way in our students. It's going to be so difficult to help young people care about school if we're just kind of going through the motions. You know what I mean? If I don't believe that teaching students history, helping them grow in their knowledge of history, their ability to think with this lens, if I don't think that is a 100% relevant pursuit for any human being, just because it enables you to live life in a way that without history knowledge, you're unable to live. If I don't believe that, then I should not be surprised if my students don't, because I'm the leader of the classroom. I can't cultivate what I don't have. I can't plant seeds that aren't in my pocket. So there's this line from Martin Lloyd-Jones. If there's any Tim Keller fans in the audience, this was one of his go-to guys. Actually, C.S. Lewis was another one. In his sermons, he quoted from those guys a million times. And Lloyd-Jones he's riffing on Psalm 42, where the psalmist says, "Why are you so downcast, my soul?" And I mean, look at this point that he makes. I love it. He's basically saying the psalmist here is doing something that's psychologically brilliant. The psalmist is realizing that it's possible to speak to yourself, to talk yourself into things. And, I think that when it comes to teaching, so like, I'm not saying this solves everything, right? Like, it's not all about positive self-talk, not trying to go there. But I am trying to say that I think, especially early in your career, especially if you're having a crisis of faith in the work that you do right now, that there does need to be a little bit of this, bring God into the conversation, but conversation with your soul of, wait a second, wait a second, this is what I wanted when I went to school. This is what I signed up for. Yeah, it's hard. It's turning out to be much harder than I expected. There's challenges now that I never would have guessed. There's stuff that School of Ed just didn't prepare me for, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yeah, but still, here I am today. I am teaching and I have to talk myself into, wow, what I'm doing is good. A very useful tool for this is what I call the rainbow of why. So this is just a picture of all the different ways there are to value a thing, a subject, a class. So most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but a big problem, colleague, that you and I face, is we live in this culture that's so obsessed with usefulness, so obsessed with utility. And so we can start to think, yeah, I'm teaching algebra 2, that's not very used in the real world. That's not very relevant to most jobs. And when we can start to drink the cultural Kool-Aid, so to speak, we can begin to really get doubting of the value of teaching the algebra 2 class. But I think that actually there's a whole other way to do this. I just want to show this brief little clip here of a math teacher, to just give you a sense here. Linda, can you hear her?
No.
You don't hear that?
I'm not.
Okay. All right. I realized as I was pulling this up, like, shoot, we didn't test the audio. All right. I'll put a link to this in the chat, colleague. You can watch it after, but please do watch this. It's not long. And what I love about this is that she, I put it in the chat there. What I love about this is that in her little speech, she only gives a speech for like 30 seconds, but she talks about how math is beautiful, how it will help you to live out your purpose in your life, whatever your purpose ends up being. She talks about how it's going to give you power to solve problems effectively and efficiently in a way you can communicate to others. So she basically, it's truly a gift to all of us that Caroline decided to hit record this day, because in so little space, she shows you what it looks like to be truly passionate about your craft. And she's just talking like she's talking about the weather. A little more excited maybe than the weather. But what I mean is that you can tell listening to her, she's not putting on a show. She has cultivated in her heart this deep belief in the goodness of what she's doing and the value of math. And if you look on that screen behind her, look what's on the board. Does that look super relevant, colleagues? Does that look super useful to most student jobs? I can't tell you the last time I had to do sine or triangle angles in my work. But I tell you what, I listened to the teacher for about 30 seconds, give her a little speech, and I'm like, where's the nearest math class? I want to go. I want to learn some math. Thank you, please. So these two areas, I know that I've perseverated on these, but I think it's kind of meant to be these areas of passion and care. These things will make credibility a byproduct, almost an unthought about byproduct, especially when you start to work on your areas of weakness. So like I said earlier, that competence piece, you really got to target that. And, in the book I described, there's some things you can be a teacher and you can go your whole career and not be competent in them, and it won't matter. But there's other things that you really do have to figure out. You've got to figure out how to design, basic lesson structures that work in your discipline. You've got to understand your curriculum. You got to go to town and try to understand how that curriculum works and why it's designed that way. You got to understand classroom management, and you need to watch teachers who are good at it. You need to read Michael Inson's blog. So, care and passion aren't all it takes, but golly, they make the job a lot more fun, and they will help a lot. Even if you're not currently that great at all the other stuff I just said, students will give a lot of grace to someone who genuinely cares about them and is genuinely passionate. So, credibility is at the bottom of this pyramid for a very important reason. It is the foundation. what do people say after Jesus spoke? They didn't say, "Oh, that was really valuable speech." They said, "He speaks like someone who has authority. This guy's credible." I am having a hard time not taking deeply to heart what this rabbi is saying, because he is credibility personified, and I think that that's what he intends for our discipleship too. He wants you and I to become the kind of people who, really, without having to stress ourselves out, grow competent at cultivating these 5 key beliefs in young people. So, I'll just say, because I'm sure that maybe there's a couple questions, Linda, and I want to make sure I leave people with a sense of, if they would desire more of this type of stuff, where they can find it.
Absolutely.
So if you search on YouTube for my name, Dave Stuart Jr., you'll find quite a number of videos, and more every week. I'm really working on this right now. So there's my name, so that you spell it right. I don't know who that Dave Stew guy is, but he's not me. And I've got videos in there about moments of genuine connection, all the 5 key beliefs, specific strategies for all of them. So, what I'm basically trying to do over time is make it so that this whole book is in some way, shape, or form represented on YouTube. It won't be as organized as the book, or, as kind of referable as the book. But that's a great place to go if you're feeling that tiredness with student motivation and just that hopelessness. I just think there's a boatload of hope.
Thank you, Dave. And I'm gonna just double recommend. Definitely don't just stop here. Follow Dave on YouTube, grab his book. If you want to go really deep, get one of his courses. I know this, we hardly scratched the surface, but Dave, thank you so much. I know this is really helpful for me to hear. And I know, from looking at the comments, is really helpful for so many teachers here. We do have about 5 minutes left. If you guys have questions, we probably have time for 1 or 2. Dave, one question I'm seeing here, can you go back to the rainbow of why and just give a really brief, what are those different pieces again?
Yeah, for sure. So utility is usefulness. When am I ever going to use this, teacher? Is a question about utility. Relevance is, it relates to my life. So this would be the teacher who knows the student is a Swiftie, giving the student a Taylor Swift song to analyze or something like that. Justice pro-social is, this will help me help others. There's a really neat study where they took students who, I don't want to get into it, but justice pro-social angles are very powerful because young people want to make the world a better place, even though they often don't act like that all the time, especially early in the morning. I mean, who does early in the morning, Social status is a sense of helping me feel like I rank high in some way, shape, or form. So games in the classroom can help with that for some students and really hurt with that with others. Autonomy is empowerment. Novelty is newness. Enjoyment, pleasure, self-explanatory. Meaning, purpose. These are kind of those deep senses of how this connects to life for me. And the last, beauty is the aesthetic. And what I find is that we're way biased in education towards the top too. And that is very detrimental to students. Because what it does when teacher after teacher after teacher after teacher is trying to explain to them when they're ever going to use it someday, how is it relevant to them? What it does is it tells that student an implicit message. The world's all about you. School is all about you. But actually, history is not all about them. It's way bigger than any of us. Math, music, art, way bigger than any of us. Literature, it's not about any one person. So you read literature for way more reasons than you're gonna, have to know stuff about Charlotte Bronte someday. That's the last reason you read literature. So, I'm glad you pulled that out because I did zip by there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And that does just, I love this rainbow because it does open your mind so much. Because you're right. Sometimes we're like, are they going to use this? And that's not the only reason. That's not the only purpose that we should be excited to teach it and that it's worthwhile learning it. And man, you think even those ones at the bottom, meaning, purpose, beauty, I mean, that's something God gives us. So if God valued putting beauty into the world, we can just enjoy something for the good of it. That's
and
so
kids
powerful.
are not used to most content area teachers just saying, man, you know what? This is beautiful what we're doing. So I encourage teachers, say the heck out of that. Because it'll just get by their defenses. They're like, man, I've heard a lot of things, Mr. Stewart, but not the history's beautiful.
Yeah. Yes. A whole new way of thinking. That's great.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you again so much. Any final words as we close up?
Well, just may the Lord bless and keep all of you.
Yes.
Make His face shine right on you. I want you to feel how much He likes you, because I guarantee He does. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, David. And thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this extended podcast episode where we relived one of my favorite sessions from the Rise Up Summit. And I hope you'll join us again this weekend, where Dave Stuart will be back talking about the reality of how learning is hard and giving us strategies on how to reduce that struggle and help our students succeed. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And once again, you can join us for free at riseupchristianeducators.com. Well, this episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. In the meantime, teacher, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and He's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on Him and teach for the heart.